Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Adam. I'm going to start off the presentation and then Ryan's going to talk about a local case study. We're industry partners, even though we're scientists, but we're shaking it up a bit. This talk is not about science. This talk is about people. And I also wanted to draw the link to a hub. A hub is a centre of information and it's a focal point. And I'm using this to give you some metrics. Some of them are real, some of them are estimated. As part of this project on best practice coral restoration, we engage with 38 traditional owners. That's the first number I've heard today in terms of an output. We engage with 13 scientists who co-authored the report, many people in the tourism industry, a few in government, NGOs and the community. That's directly. What about indirectly? It was also a lot more. We worked in the tourism industry from Port Douglas, Cairns, Townsville and the Whitsundays, and our reach was huge through a range of communication products, estimated at about 1 million people in the tourism industry. And there's also an unbelievable number there at the top, 184 million, which was measured, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that later. My part of the talk is about the objectives of the project, which were to review methods, trial the most promising, and bring together knowledge and produce some guidelines and other documents. And so now I'm going to talk about a couple of ways of measuring these through innovation, acceleration, collaboration, and what we're proud of, the legacy of this project. I'm also going to try and summarise the lessons learned in a SWOT analysis, what was good and what we could have done better. So in terms of innovation, we developed a database and we used Tableau to visualise it. That's now global. We trialled a number of different methods at a number of different locations, and we also tried to make sure that they were sustainable. So we tried not to use plastic. We tried not to use things that would be marine debris, things that fitted with the environment. And we also tried to integrate underwater art with reef restoration, largely associated with some funding opportunities, but also to try something different. The second thing I wanted to talk about was acceleration, and just to give you a bit of a taste, from the early days of this project in 2017, 2018, we started with one. And there's certainly a lot of interest in the community for reef restoration and people wanting to get involved. And this includes business, community, volunteers, scientists. So everything we've touched has grown. So from Magnetic Island, there's now 3 projects. The Whitsundays, we started with 4 nurseries and in the first year planted 350 corals. Last year we had 14 nurseries and planted almost 1,000. And in terms of training and capacity building, we've been running an annual reef restoration and leadership course at Orpheus Island Research Station, and then a couple of other bespoke courses with the Australian Rural Leadership Foundation, citizen scientists, a whole range of funding. But it's gone from a small handful of scientists to now a community that is much more engaged and much more skilled in reef restoration. And there's going to be more. Here's a lot of lovely logos, and this is by far not all of them, but this project has relied very much on collaboration and the tourism industry have been hugely supportive. Healthy reefs, healthy coral, diverse fish are essential for their product, and when their product is damaged from cyclones or coral bleaching, they want to do something quick. They don't want to wait 1 year for a permit, they want to start planting coral or doing things straight away. So we've worked with them with the realities of the bureaucracy, but we've achieved some amazing outcomes, both here on the Great Barrier Reef and also internationally. And here I think is the most important slide. This project has been a game changer. It's had some amazing legacy, and scientists measure the benefits based on publications, but we're measuring it all about people. We set up the Australian Coral Restoration Consortium following international best practice. We've empowered a number of people and organisations. A small example is when we started engaging with the Nauru people in the Whitsundays and asked them to learn more about culture. They'd lost a lot of it, but through part of our research we found this publication, almost 100 years old, by Gilbert Whitley, who had written down the names of common species in their language. We were able to share it back, and it opened their eyes. It changed their way. It reconnected them to country. Underwater art, we've done installations in the Whitsundays and Townsville. And again, very few people have talked about sustainability today. We've tried to make sure that we're super sustainable and carbon neutral. So our training activities and our events have been measured and offset. Because climate change, of course, is the biggest issue threatening the Great Barrier Reef. We've won a couple of awards, and I've also showing a couple of products that have been published or in prep, and one is this global book, Active Coral Restoration, edited by David Vaughan, and that's coming out very soon. Where are we at with this project? And I said I'd talk about idea generation and outputs. We've turned an idea, we've refined it, we've tested it, we've deployed it, and now it's ready to scale up. And that's really exciting. And there's a number of great opportunities to do that, to help the reef, help the community, and help the bottom line. And I also said I'd try and summarise this for you with a SWOT analysis. There's a lot more strengths than weaknesses here, which is always a good thing. I'll point out a couple of them. One of the things that we're very happy was to help the Whitsunday community restore cyclone-damaged sites using reef restoration techniques. We've developed a Great Barrier Reef toolkit, and I've mentioned some of the other strengths. Weaknesses, short-term funding. If you're going to do ecological restoration, you want to do it for at least 3 to 10 years, not 6 months or 18 months. And survivorship has been a bit challenging. We've gone through coral bleaching and we've had a bit of predation from fish. That's a fact of life. Let's look to the future. I really do believe this is an opportunity that should be led by traditional owners and should have strong local leadership. There's an opportunity to expand training for not only us as providers to be carbon neutral, but for you, for government and other stakeholders to value it and to take action and so forth. It is the UN Decade of Restoration. That's also a huge opportunity. And there's demonstration on sites on land. They've been identified to have demonstration sites in the water as part of the Reef Blueprint, but I can't name one yet. Another great opportunity. There's lots of threats around environmental change, safety, and loss of continuity. And I talked about that 184 million number. As a scientist, I often talk to groups such as this, 100 people. But in order to get our message out much more broadly, you've got to do something outside the box. This is the coral greenhouse that's been created by Jason DeCares Taylor off Townsville. It's a stainless steel structure that is getting people to think differently. It has reef guardians. This is a local Indigenous girl looking down a microscope. And most recently, we've started planting some coral in the coral greenhouse, and we're doing an aesthetic survey. The launch of that was global, and it was measured by Townsville Enterprise, 400 plus articles in all sorts of journals, reaching 184 million people. Imagine if your projects could reach so much, what we could do together. Here's Ryan.
Thanks, Adam. And just acknowledge that when Reef Restoration Foundation was formed in 2017, Adam played a pivotal role in the formation. And whilst I didn't have anything to do with this particular project, the legacy that I've inherited has set us up for success in the future. But Reef Restoration Foundation was formed following the 2016 bleaching event. Put the wind up a lot of people, probably in this room, that you could have a bleaching event adjacent to Cape York, where we don't have the same sort of land-based pressures affecting the marine environment. When it backed up again in 2017, the decision to form a group when it wasn't a legal activity in the marine park was vindicated. And then, of course, they had that meeting in May I was at, and the idea that the Marine Park Authority changed the policy around how interventions are dealt with, from keeping people away from affected areas to actually active intervention, given that the frequency of disturbances were increasing, so the capacity to fully recover was starting to diminish. And so an active intervention was decided was the way to go. Being the first permit holder on the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park isn't without its warts. There is a burden of proof that comes with it, and so we had quite comprehensive conditions around it, and effectively we needed to prove that we were creating some form of solution rather than exacerbating a problem. That legacy on that particular permit, one of a couple that we've got across a handful of reefs, persists today, but we're moving it beyond that. Ours is very much small-scale site stewardship approach, very much around partnerships. All the things that Adam said around collaboration, it's absolutely critical in the model that we've adopted. We're not a government-funded organisation. We're funded by businesses and individual donors. We don't ask for money, which is a critical point in its own right. So our stature, our stance is one that's highly independent, but our culture of collaboration is something that I have pursued throughout my career, and I know some of you from various aspects of my career over the last 25 years, and we're very much around collaboration. In fact, Reef Restoration Foundation is involved in a collaborative project with Experience Co and Durrawurrul Aboriginal Corporation at the moment, which I'm very excited about. There's no real time to go into it so much today, but yeah, watch this space. I think there's a bit of
The green button at the top.
There's a bit of a drag. Okay, so look, our model is based on one that's adopted in the Caribbean, primarily around the Florida Keys, and also around Bonaire in the Dutch Antilles. I didn't think much of it when I first saw it from afar, from working in the marine aquarium industry, where we'd been working with corals since 1957 and thought we knew it all. We don't, obviously. The idea of choosing this model for implementation in the marine park, where there'd been no reef restoration up until the end of 2017, but the type of activity had been used in different parts of the world for different purposes. Not only this one, but other purposes for stabilising rubble fields that have been brought about by dynamite fishing in Indonesia, for example. Others in the Caribbean, where they have limited biodiversity to start with, but they also have some very large rivers run into that body of water, some wicked storms, and they're trying to rebuild some reefs where you've only really got a couple of species of staghorn corals to play with. So we've got 2 nursery areas, although we got permits also at 3 different sites at Moore Reef. Our main R&D site, which has really become an R&D site since the plague, it's given us an opportunity to focus there, because our model is built very much on partnerships with tourism operators that give us the logistics support to get us out to the sites. Fitzroy Island, being primarily a domestic market product, hasn't seen the type of downturn that other products have that are more reliant on inbound tourists. So we've decided that we're going to use that area, and we have been, to trial a bunch of different things, to take a business-like approach to it, which is primarily my background, and where we try and get the best possible result, output-wise and outcome-wise, for the least possible investment, because we're not using lump sum investments from the public sector or anything like that. We field interest from business, and typically those contributions, if we accept them, because they're heavily vetted, aren't going to sustain us on their own. So we've just put a 3rd nursery in there at Fitzroy Island only in the last couple of weeks, and we'll be doing some quite exciting trials, which I think is going to increase our output by probably 3-fold. So I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that. The idea of the trees is that we cut fragments, or we pick up fragments of corals of opportunity, but our permit was built around cutting fragments out of donor colonies to no more than about 5 centimetres, and we suspend them in the trees high in the water column with a duckbill anchor sunk into the substrate, typically at about 14 metres, and on a rope to the tree frame, which is about 2 metres high, and then a float that sits about 2 metres below the lowest astronomical tide for navigation purposes. The idea of sinking them into about 14 metres is if we get some warm water coming along, or if we get a big storm coming our way, we can get in, we can lower the trees right down to 14 metres, where we've got a little bit more cold water, and a little bit more buffering from storm action. The point is, though, the corals are sitting up in the water column where they have access to, greater access to sunlight for photosynthesis, so they grow faster and they can grow spherically. And they don't have any of the issues around parasites and whatever else that they would have been putting up with if they were lying on a seabed. And then the idea is that we plant them back out on the reef just using a marine cement. The limitation is, however, is that, and all of these different methods have their own limitations. Ours is that it's restricted to planting on nice, clean, hard substrate. Reefs aren't all nice, clean, hard substrate. So, part of our experimentation, research and development going forward is looking at complementary methods so that we can use a range of different methods together and try and increase the resilience of the reef at the site-based level. Something that's replicable within different communities, and it's scalable as a result. We're not pretending that we're saving the reef or anything like that, but there is a very acute public awareness and education component to this, and I sense a fraternity that's being built. We work with other organisations that do what's collectively called reef restoration or site stewardship and building resilience. Each of those organisations have been formed to perform different methods and to use those methods to achieve different outcomes, and we work together. That's the spirit of it. Build on partnerships. I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to brush over that. But it's all about the supporters and the volunteers. We have 70 volunteers on our books, all rescue certified divers, and there's butchers, bakers, candlestick makers, the whole box and dice. And the types of businesses that support us locally are providing us with goods and services, and the types of businesses that support us financially are all over the planet. And theirs is about corporate social responsibility, and some of the conversations I have in Zoom are quite incredible at the passion and the commitment of these companies that are looking to invest in something that's non-government for a start. That's not a government bashing comment, it's just they want things to happen now. They understand that globally, yes, we've got to decarbonise economies, absolutely, without a doubt. But there is something that we can do now, each and every one of us, and that's the type of thinking that is underpinning this kind of collectivity. The volunteers are just sensational. I've never worked with a happier bunch of committed people who give unto themselves. And our model up until quite recently, where I've been trying to invest in some support mechanisms around a boat, an operational headquarters, some sun protection, a trolley, anything to make life easier for them. But for the last 3 years, they've been filling dive bottles in town, lugging them out to the ferry, and then lugging them another half a kilometre up the beach to get in with all their kit on and swimming half a kilometre to the dive site, and then doing it all in reverse at the end of a long day. Now, you've got to take your hat off to them. They're the lifeblood of our organisation, and I've got a team of 4 which I'm now paying to keep them engaged, I guess, is probably more than anything else. So we've got about 30 main businesses that help us. This model, I love this model because I don't have to apply for a grant, wait for that grant to go for 9 months, 6 months, however long it takes, and then find that you're not successful, or if you are, what you've been successful at isn't what you set out to achieve. This way we can act quickly and move on it straight away. I'm out of time, so I'm going to pretty well leave it at that. Just to give you an idea of some of the quantum, though, the businesses that help us are giving us anything from a few $100s to 150 grand. It's enormous, and even the individual donors, anything from $50 to, on 2 occasions, $10,000 from an individual. Fantastic. This has all come from the type of work that went into this NESP project, so for that I'll be eternally grateful. Thanks very much.